I've blocked her now. Anyway, welcome to Spin Legal, everybody. We didn't block you. Honestly, we didn't block you. we were talking about some of those nasty sales calls that come from South Carolina.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry, I love people in South Carolina, right? But I don't like nasty sales calls from South Carolina.
Yeah. Like I get a call from somebody who claims they're calling from Windows, that one of my computers has a defective Windows. So I ask them, which one of my computers?
They can't tell you.
Yeah, exactly, because they don't know how many computers I have.
Yeah. Okay. And then they say all three of them, and you say, "Ha, caught you."
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. Welcome everybody to Spin Legal, and especially because I know he's going to come here. What's his name?
Our friend Robert.
Robert DePau. Yeah. Okay. So this is Spin Legal on December 4th, 2024, and it's episode number 45 with Angela and myself. And we are partners of Invictus Legal. Tonight, our topic is an introduction to forensic evidence in civil cases. So we were looking last week at criminal. We're looking at civil this week. Okay. If you need to contact Invictus Legal, you can do so on 905-688-5598 and email him Angela at weareinvictus.legal or myself at peter@weareinvictus.legal. And I promise I won't answer it ever. No, I'm joking, of course.
He sends it right to the spam mail.
And you can visit our webpage, which is https://weareinvictus.legal. So, as I said, last week, we talked about forensic evidence being the physical trace evidence that is left behind at a crime scene. But that's not all we deal with forensic evidence, because this week we're going to be talking about forensics as to its part it can play in civil litigation. And just to be everybody knows, civil cases, civil actions normally begin with a claim or a complaint that is formed by the plaintiff.
And this is a private action.
Yeah.
Okay? A criminal action is a public complaint where it's filed by the state against somebody.
Yeah.
Okay? And
the
then
private action is
mostly a private action.
Yeah. So it's like John Smith versus Mary Jones, or it could also be husband versus wife or something like that.
Family cases.
Right. Those are family cases.
Car accidents.
Exactly.
Workplace injuries.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different things where forensic evidence is useful, or even within an employment situation, if you're suspecting there's time theft, fraud, or other things on behalf of an employee or somebody who is acting for you, and in terms of one of your suppliers or something like that. There's various ways of where forensic actually adds up.
Let's go back to the civil action, right? So usually there's a lot of questions about during the discovery process, lawyers are going to examine all potential witnesses under oath, using a deposition, excluding, and this will include expert witnesses. So that might be forensic scientists, forensic psychologists, forensic accountants, and they exist, right? They exist. Okay.
I know a forensic accountant.
Small claims, just to note, is slightly different because here the procedures are simplified, squashed into a more manageable bundle.
Evidence submission, exchange of documents, that sort of thing. But you don't get the time to have the 2-hour discovery like you do under simplified procedure.
Yeah. So they're more simplified than simplified procedure. Okay. And essentially, whichever court you're in, there are rules of evidence that are used as a standard by which the court was going to make its decisions about admissibility of all evidence produced by any party. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So any further thoughts about what we've said so far?
Well, I think that what's really interesting is that A lot of people don't associate forensic with civil procedures, but
Yeah.
we've done it.
Yeah.
We've done it where I'd go on to a work site or a place and I would do an operational audit to see whether correct procedures or policies are being followed, whether correct things have been done. And then I'd also have somebody come with me who does the forensic financial, like the accounting. I do
Yeah.
some of the accounting during an operational audit, but the forensic accountant does a lot more details. Like they dive in deep. Okay?
Yeah.
And it's very interesting going through this procedure. And this just has to do with, is this organization or company who is contracted to deliver a particular service, are they getting their money's worth? Are they doing what they're supposed to by the money that they're given by either United Way or by the government or by foundation or whatever? So they would do an analysis of all of that. And
Well,
it's quite an interesting process.
and there's a whole heap of things, but there's a large, wide choice of where forensics comes into play.
Yeah.
Let's start at the first of them, forensic psychology. I think this is where you have a bit more knowledge than I do.
Yeah. This is where certain types of people have patterns or behavior, where they start showing certain types of behavior, and it can become suspect or maybe part of it that can give them into a clue, either what they're going to do next or what they have done and how they're trying to hide from things. It
I think
depends on the type of
that's an element.
situation you're looking into.
That's a key element, hiding things.
Like, say,
Right.
for instance, last week we talked about serial killers.
Yeah.
And that serial killers generally don't go around killing all over the place and hiding bodies in 950 different spots, thousands of miles from each other. They don't do that. They tend to be sticking around certain areas, and they tend to follow certain patterns in terms of their
Yeah.
of their processes. And when you're looking at a civil procedure, like say if you're defrauding an employer, similar patterns are followed.
Yeah.
One
Oh, yeah.
employer to the next until they're caught.
Yep, exactly. So there's a psychology or pathology, I guess, about it.
Mhm. And this
Right.
is why I say that if you have suspicions, talk to former employers, different people that have known the guy before, and if this has actually happened before.
Yeah.
And then you follow through on different patterns and so forth, and then you know that there is a certain pattern of that person. It doesn't mean they all do things the same way, but there's like we used to joke around about it, like said, no, I didn't steal the VCR.
No, I just put it in my top pocket and
Yeah.
took it home with
And
me.
I said, I didn't say a VCR was stolen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's different patterns where people try to do things, and then they try to cover their tracks. And in certain episodes, now what we're doing with computers and with cameras and videos, you can't hide from a computer what you're
Yeah.
doing with that computer.
Oh, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute, because
Because I'm
me and
sitting beside somebody who can actually detect it.
well, myself and computers.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. So moving on, forensic accounting. Both you and I have experience with this.
Yep.
And
Working with a forensic accountant
I've
is so
dealt with a lot of accountants over my lifetime. In fact, a lot of what I used to do in IT was about accounting, or particularly management accounting. So that the
Yeah.
higher level management accounting, how you would use the data within the corporation in order to give your profit and loss figures and automate those profit
Yeah.
and loss figures on
Yeah.
a monthly basis.
Yeah, because sometimes when you're just first of all doing your costs and you're trying to do your fees and your pricing schedule, you start with the cost accounting type of analysis. And then you move into another type of thing for longevity, because you want to have some money left over, because you want to be able to account for things that come your way when you don't necessarily want them to come your way, like you suddenly need a new computer, or your car breaks down and it's the engine. Things like that. So there's a lot of things that you have to plan for. Okay, so this is why when we do our business planning sessions, we talk to people in great details about what the types of planning that you need to do, how to do a cost analysis, how to do the different things, and also how you put it together so that you can determine how much each unit of your service costs.
Yeah. And
Forensic
at the
accounting,
end of the day, if somebody's defrauding your company, forensic accounting is going to be a part and parcel of detecting that.
yep, they would find out where, say, okay, this is how much it costs to deliver X unit of service, but somehow this much was billed for that unit of service, and it
Yeah.
should only be this much. So generally, if say, I'm just going to make it very, very simple. Like say if you're selling a widget and each widget costs $100 to produce, and that was your cost accounting figures. But somehow somebody's got the widgets being costing, not selling, but costing 3 times as much. So
Yeah.
there's something built into that process that's leaving the company,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
Even
yeah.
though the cost accounting was done properly and so forth. So these sorts of things have to be found, and there's a lot of deep diving that's concerned. I remember working with a number of financial forensic financial wizards, and they were very interesting to talk to. You got a lot of charisma.
Well, well, the other thing, of course, about things like forensic accounting, and these are where big money lawsuits go in. For
Yeah,
example, defrauding companies out of stocks and shares and that sort of thing.
yep.
That kind of stuff
Starting
is
stock
all part and
and things.
parcel of it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
like somebody had to do that for the Enron and Madoff.
Yeah.
Somebody had to do it. They had to
Yeah.
figure out
But
how.
again, okay, the Enron and Madoff are actually, of course, led to criminal charges. But again, there were still civil
Yeah,
actions within that.
yeah. And
Yeah.
in employment cases, many of them don't lead to criminal charges, but they may have grounds for civil suits. Like, say, for
Yeah.
example, if you suspect an employee is guilty of time theft. Now,
Yeah.
with all these employees working at home, for a lot of them, hey, a lot
Yeah.
of them are working 2 or 3 or 4 different jobs.
Yeah. And
They don't
and
tell any of the employers that they're doing
yeah.
that. Okay,
Yeah,
but there's ways of finding out.
Mary's charging, your company, 100% of her salary. She's charging my company 100% of her salary. She's charging Joe's company 100% of her salary, and she's getting paid 3 times as much. She's earning more than I am.
Yeah, exactly. She's earning more than the CEO of all our companies,
Yeah,
and she only works a 40-hour week.
yeah.
You know, so there's different ways of finding that out, and they're getting more and more sophisticated.
Oh, they are. They are.
Yeah, and
Okay,
this is
so
very important.
So let's move on to some physical things. This is more old-fashioned than computer tech, right?
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
lot of where I concentrated on mostly with my operational audits, where
yeah,
we had physical documentation, minutes of meetings. Okay, John or Mary are going to do this. Then John and Mary are supposed to follow up, but John and Mary didn't. But then somebody else took advantage of something that John and Mary was supposed to do, but got it messed
and
up.
let's face it. In every organization, when there are team meetings, there are often things that are assigned to people that don't get done for whatever reason. Let's not go to the point of accusing people of performing their job badly. I don't think it's that at
Yeah,
all.
yeah,
It's
that's like
just
we asked for bios and
yeah,
pics from people, and somehow
yeah,
they never showed up.
yeah. and
Okay.
and there are and it's nothing, in those particular instances, it's nothing that anybody did particularly that was wrong. It's
Yeah,
just that it wasn't
people get
high on
busy.
the priority list,
Yeah,
right?
people get busy.
Yeah,
Right? They have other things, and then by the time they come here, oh, I've got to meet with the client. I've got to do this. I've got a
yeah.
hearing, and then by the time the next meeting comes around, it says, yeah, oh, I'll get it. I'll get to it.
And a lot of this this document examination with physical documents, we are talking old-fashioned, old paper documents that have been with us for hundreds of years. So
Look at
you're
the
looking
signatures,
for
we follow the
looking for
signatures.
handwriting,
Yep.
sketches,
Even the
signatures on
typeface,
yeah.
even the typeface on the document, if there's
Yeah.
any differences in the typeface. There's a lot of different things when you're looking at that to know whether something might have been funny about it. Like there's little tricks you can do with the photocopier, okay, that can make it look like the document
Well,
said
we'll
something else
come
than
to
it actually
photocopier
did.
we'll come to
And
photocopy.
we found out a lot of document creation back in the 90s.
Well, I must admit that, hey, I used to love playing with a photocopier when I was younger. And nothing illegitimate. I'd just make artwork from photocopies.
Oh yeah, there's lots of things.
Because what would happen is a piece of paper would go through and it would go like this, scroll up and I went, oh, that's interesting. How can you make pictures from folding paperwork and things like that?
Yeah.
Right. And I just love to play with that kind of thing.
Yeah, now we can do it in color.
You can, yes, yeah. Okay, but there's another element about document examination, of course, which is those associated with computers, database, and they have a thing on them called metadata.
Yep.
And what metadata is, it tells things like Joey did this on the 1st of August, right? And
This came from this computer on the 1st of August at this such and such a time and this second. It's like the computer putting its stamp on it.
Yeah. And furthermore, when Abdul picks it up on the 2nd of September, it tags when Abdul did it as well. And Abdul's doing it on a different computer. All of that is all got metadata behind it. Right?
Especially if you're working from the same cloud, even if you're operating different computers.
If you're operating out of the corporate space, that's for sure. Yeah. Okay. Also, the thing to note with that, of course, is that that we were talking a moment ago about physical documents and the things you can do with physical documents. Of course, you can do so much more with actual electronic documents, because I've got a contract. I did a contract for ABC Bean Company, and that actually I need to actually create a contract for another company that is almost identical to my ABC Bean Company contract. So what do? I can copy it, edit what I need to edit in there, and hey presto, I've got a new contract. All of that is traceable, and if you turn the right things on, all of the keystrokes, all of the history, all of the changes are all trackable.
Yep, because it's very important to have all the tracking in place and so forth. Like these are some of the questions people are asking about artificial intelligence and so forth, which is something that we can get into later. But you want to make sure that anything that gets developed, whether it's a video, whether it's a document, whether it's a recording of some sort or a voice, that these things are trackable.
Yeah.
So we know where it came from, who did it, and whether it's legit. Okay? Yeah. So these are why it says this is not coming from the company because it doesn't have the company's IP or whatever. There's a lot of different things that could be looked at.
And the interesting thing is that scammers actually can make their documents look precisely like somebody else's documents, right?
Yep.
So they borrow logos, they do everything that looks alike. Now, back in the days of physical documents, that of course was a lot harder because I can't just photocopy the Invictus logo. I can't just do that and use it because photocopying generally has a loss of quality to it. Right?
And so now you can make a lot cleaner copy.
Yeah. I can't photocopy and amend, but with digital, we can, the digital copy is 100% like the digital original.
Yep. Right? Digital copy, just move over what you want to put on it, then you just change some lines.
Yeah.
And even now, electronic signature, you can take the electronic signature of the person, that you want to pretend signed it, then put it on.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
you got to be careful with those electronic signatures. There should be a two-factor authorization for the use of electronic signatures.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to something else, document deletion, right? So back in the days when you were with physical documents, document deletion, of course, was in the realm of shredding it or putting it in the bin or setting fire to it, right?
Did you ever try to go into a shredder and reassemble documents?
I have never tried that. I have to
I
say,
did.
I've
I did.
never tried that. But
I did. I took
how
it
did
out
that go?
and it found out they're in tiny strips. So I took the strips and put them all together, taped them together, and I figured out why they tried to shred it.
Yeah.
And I said, they didn't think that I was going to do that, did they?
You see, of course, if you were the serious shredder that was really going to do that, what you'd do is you'd shred the document, then you'd pull the shredder tray out, and then you stick your hand in and go stir like this, wouldn't you? Then try and patch them all together, eh?
Yeah, exactly. But that's the kind of thing, and people just kind of tried to get away with a lot of things over the years.
Yeah.
And
But
because they
okay,
can
so
do it. Just most people who do these sorts of things, I don't know whether they want to get caught or maybe they just don't know how to cover their tracks properly. Right?
yeah.
But this is the kind of thing that putting things together that way, it's quite simple.
Well,
And even looking at different things, like people think that once they trash a document on a computer, then trash it from the recycling bin, they think that, oh, it's gone. They're never going to find it.
yeah. Yeah.
There's something called undelete.
Undelete. Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
And all
And,
kinds of stuff can come back.
And of course,
one
this
surprise.
is where we're talking about digital or computer forensics. When it comes down to the computer itself, of course, computers actually tag all sorts of things with metadata. Metadata is the biggest thing that are on computers. It's like even if you've got a database, and I put on Fred Jones's customer record on it, it records that I added it to the system. Then 5 minutes later, Angela comes along and says, oh, that phone number's not quite correct. It's not 6615, it's 6655, right? And she corrects it, saves the record. It records that computer did some work on that record, right?
Edited such and such a time.
Yeah, exactly. And exactly where you did it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, then the other question is that metadata connects, metadata covers things like cameras, location data. It's even what you can do with keystroke analysis today. And there are many companies, believe it or not, that actually record every keystroke that everybody makes. So if you think you can go out on your company computer and search for porn, they can catch you. They can figure it, The fact they don't catch you is because they don't care, right? They don't care that you've done that. Your porn choice is your porn choice.
People have been looking at the computer. I don't even have to sit at their computer desk.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to sit at it. In fact, actually, the server will actually record all of that information.
Yeah, because
the interesting thing is. And the interesting thing is, delete 1,100 files, and hey, I can get those 1,100 files back.
Yep, exactly.
Right, exactly those files, exactly the last changes, and furthermore, I can actually trace what you did to those files.
Yep, exactly.
Right.
Yep, were they sent anywhere? Were they shared? Were they stored? Yep, we have them. We can find out. And this is why it's very important if you're using company computers or even extracting from company computers. You have to be extremely careful because the company likely has a way of finding out what you're doing.
Hi, Robert.
So if you want to do that kind of stuff, do it at home to your own stuff, your own data, your own problems. Okay? Then you just got yourself to blame if you lose things.
And okay, so the other, as I said, deleted files. Your searches, you're searching for, for porn or whatever you're searching for, or actually, if you're searching for your bank records and you log onto your bank, they don't care about that kind of thing most of the time, unless you're hurting somebody else by the actions that you're doing, right?
Yeah, and this is where you have to be
Yeah.
really careful. Like sometimes if you have a bank thing, you either put it on the like they have a thing where you can do on if you're trying to do Google your bank and you're trying to get in, so then
Oh,
you
yeah.
can do that.
Yeah, use of VPNs, etc.,
Yeah,
etc.
VPN, so that
Yeah.
you don't have your password sitting on somebody's desk, and then somebody else can come in and say, "Oh, I could just send myself $1,000."
And the worst of that is, of course, these are the sorts of things that people, hey, oh, I'm changing my password. It's nobody knows this.
Yeah,
Right.
it's my secret password,
And hey,
and it sits on your
where is
desk.
my secret password that nobody knows? It is right here at the bottom, right underneath my screen, right here, front and center.
Mhm.
That's where it is. Yeah.
Yep.
Like,
So
no.
the most important thing to do is get a password manager, okay, that controls that. And all you have to do is remember one password through
Yeah.
your password manager.
Yeah.
And that you do not share or carry with you.
Yeah. The other thing is, okay, so we were talking there about photocopies.
We
Photocopy.
have a photocopier and
Yeah.
document management system. I know who photocopies what and when they photocopy, when people scan, and who scans it.
Yeah.
They are at whose
Exactly.
scanning system it is in. And it tells you the time, the person, everything. And I could probably dig in and probably get the scanning because the memory
Well,
could be actually filled up.
and the other thing about this is that probably I can probably tell that Angela is responsible for use of 28.62% of black ink, 12.6% of red ink, and 11% of blue ink, and 13% of yellow ink this month.
And that's where he is. He's the guy who's the factoid person. Okay. And what are you going to do with that?
Well, I'm sorry. I want $200 for the use of it. No. No. The point being is that there are people out there that we can actually track a lot of this stuff. In the
Yep.
digital world, everything is trackable. Let's be
Yep.
honest.
Yep.
Right?
And this
I
is
was
why.
looking at I was looking for a client at a website. He said that somebody he was doing work for used to have a website. Let's call it abc.com, and they no longer have a website, right? And so I said, no problem. I can find old copies of abc.com.
Yep. There are ways to find websites
Yep,
that have
there's ways
vanished.
to find it. All right, I
And we
can
can't
find the
display it
website.
here,
Yep.
but we do know how to find it. And we also know the different changes that have been made at certain times to the website. So if Jack Jones and Peter Smith were partners, then Jack Jones and Peter Smith split up on a certain date. Then Peter Smith continues on with the company. Then Peter Smith gives up the ghost, and then the website disappears. We have a bit of a history there.
Yeah, and we know the date of the last change on that website and when it was, right? So we can track that sort of thing down. We know exactly. You can find out exactly when this kind of stuff is, and it's interesting if you were to look, or you can almost look at the time when they've stopped updating the website. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell you when the website gets deleted, but that's another matter.
Yeah, because somebody just gives up the ghost. They said, F this. Hey, and it usually just gets deleted because they don't pay their web post anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's usually what happens.
Okay, so going on again, digital tracing, including keystroke histories, search histories, etc. We talked about that. Now, if we go back into the physical world, I'd like to. So handwriting analysis. We all have handwriting.
Yep.
And
how many of you do cursive anymore?
Yeah, not many do cursive. I do.
Yeah, I do.
I don't,
Some other
you know,
people I know do cursive, and the thing is, I could recognize anybody's handwriting to look at it after they do it.
yeah.
I know who
Oh
did it.
yeah. I know whose handwriting when I'm looking at a, you know, if you write one word no on the computer on the paper or yes on the piece of paper, I might not know Angela's from Justin's, or I might not know, things like that. But when it's a significant, a whole line, a whole sentence or something, I know
Mhm.
what's Angela's handwriting. All right, I know
I
what.
have notes, handwriting and notes from different people, and I've examined them. And I do have some background in graphology because I've read a lot of books on it.
Yeah,
And it does tell me a little bit about that person and a bit about their intents when it comes to certain types of issues. And it's interesting. It's how you loop certain letters, how you end your sentences, how you say things like I or we, or like there's a lot of different things when you do that. And your signature too tells you a lot about the person.
yeah,
And if you're looking at a way, there's no two people in the whole world. I could take you and your twin,
yeah.
right? You two
Well,
of you will have completely different handwriting.
and the interesting thing is, of course, about that, we talked about me and my fictitious twin. We would have different fingerprints as well,
Yep, you'd have
right?
different fingerprints
We'd
on.
have different handwriting, different fingerprints. The only thing we would share would be DNA,
Yep, exactly.
right?
Because
And there's
there's
nothing
a
we
lot.
can do about that.
Yep, and
Okay,
it's yeah,
and no two signatures by the same person are ever identical. Remember that.
yeah.
No two signatures are identical. I do have electronic documents that I sign. We talked about
I use
two-factor
an electronic
authentication,
signature
right?
myself because I
Yeah,
like to keep things and put them into PDF and then fax them
yeah,
electronically,
yeah,
okay, to get to the parties I want them to arrive
yeah.
at.
But typically, if you're physically signing a document, the mood of the day, or even the mood of the moment, or holy shit, I've got to get home, increases it increases the look about how you're signing that document.
The
But
messier
particularly the
Peter's
holy shit, I've
signature
got to
is,
get home.
the more he is in a hurry to get out of there,
Yeah.
wherever he is.
Yeah, the holy shit, I've got to get home signature is probably different than the 8 a.m. Oh, I'm nice and relaxed right now signature,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
You know, yeah. So signatures vital, and the banks. The interesting thing is about that is banks damn well know this as well, right?
Yep. The
They,
banks will know if
yeah,
it's your signature or not.
yeah,
Even if your signature changes a little bit, they know it's your signature.
yeah,
Because there's certain things, parts of your signature that are similar, certain
yeah.
points. And people who are handwriting experts know which points they are and they will identify them.
Okay, there's another one to move on to here. Digitized handwriting exhibits parts of the person. Sorry, um, disguised handwriting will exhibits the person part of a person's individual characteristic. Um, the point being is that I may know how Angela signs the checks, but essentially, if I were to try to forge Angela's checks, it would show that, hey, I've got a particular way of looping the P, for
Hmm.
example. And when I'm looping the P, if there happens to be a P in Angela's name, I will tend to loop the P exactly the same way as I loop the P in my name.
Except
Right?
there is no P in my name, and that's
I
how I
know.
know it's not my signature.
Well, yeah, but you know where I'm coming from. You
Oh,
know where I'm
yes.
coming from, right? Um,
Just jesting.
yeah, and the whole point about that is kind of interesting because there's so much difference there. Okay, Robert's saying from all the times that I posted in the chat, you can tell a little about me. Probably, if we were
Probably.
to get a forensic psychologist in, we'd probably know a heck of a lot about you, Rob.
Absolutely.
Right?
There's a lot of things that I analyze about people. I don't say too much. Because there's even things that I told Peter earlier what I noticed in his handwriting and stuff.
My ear's aching from what she tells me.
Oh yeah, right.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a certain expert could.
Yeah, and this
Certainly
is how
true, an
I kind
expert
of
could.
analyze
Yeah.
because, and even then, there's people like I go in there and I said, I don't feel right about how a person is acting. Okay, that's also something too.
Well,
That's not necessarily forensic psychology. There's also a lot of things about empath and a lot of things about other types of recognition. Okay,
there's an
but
interesting thing from you. If I had my own pen, I'd write in my own style, and nobody can read my handwriting.
nobody can read your handwriting
I
anyway.
can't. I certainly can't read my handwriting. But
Yeah.
if I
Take it to your doctor. You take it to your doctor so she can read it for you.
yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
If I were to go pick up my mum's pen, the pen she'd been using all the time, and I'd go and write something, I'd write exactly the way my mum did when I was a kid. You know, I don't know whether and I think sometimes if I picked up somebody else's pen, I'd write the way that they write.
Hmm.
Right?
Well, it's interesting. Like it's also how you hold your hand, like over the pen. Like if you're holding your pen sort of like this, there's different ways, like how you hold the pen and how you write it.
Yeah.
Okay, some people go like that, some people go like that,
Well, and some people write like that, don't they?
and it has a different effect on the pressure that you put on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so these things are very. This is the kind of studies that people do, and there are people who go to school for a long time to learn these things, and they get paid big bucks to tell us about it.
And yeah, and in fact, actually, what they're saying, they can introduce personal characteristics. Then you've got freehand or simulated or copied forgery. Right?
Yep.
So essentially, I could probably copy your handwriting, so I can then forge your suicide note, because I've got a number of samples of your handwriting. So I'm cutting out, I, Angela Browne, on this day, 4th of December 2024, hereby commit suicide, and I leave everything to Peter Giblett because he's my friend. Right.
Then you go into my estate and there's $0 and 0 cents.
Well, yeah, but again, those sort of things, the forgeries, these people can actually trace those forgeries. So
Yep. They
if you
can
were
tell
to
the difference.
Yeah. If you were to do that sort of thing, you can be found out, right? You can't fool a good expert.
Yeah, because there was a case where somebody was supposedly had committed suicide. Right? But everybody around them said there was no reason for them to commit suicide. They were always cheerful. They were looking forward to things. They had plans for their lives. They're going on vacation.
And they just asked their girlfriend to marry them or
marriage.
something.
Everything was fine. Then all of a sudden he supposedly killed himself.
Yeah.
Okay? And then they turned around and they found this note, this suicide note. Okay? Like not all suicides do write notes. Okay? But in some cases they do. So then they found the note, they took it there and they found out it was forged. And then they later on found out who forged it and who killed the person. It's very interesting. You have to see who has.
Yeah, we're back in the realm.
Spouse, then you blame anybody close who might have an interest in having that person die.
So you're back in the realms of criminal, but a lot of the same psychology happens to civil matters as well.
Like I can sign a check from Peter and write it to Angela Browne, okay? And then I can forge Peter's signature, right? And then I can go and cash the check. Even though it'll probably bounce all over Japan, but
yeah. Okay, so the other thing, of course, to note is that mechanical devices result in wear and tear to the machine's moving parts. So, for example, printers and typewriters, the moving parts that do the physical, back in the day when it was the physical typewriter, bang, 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 is typing the keys onto the piece of paper. that physical typewriter, the S on the typewriter would change its characteristics over time. And for example, an S written on that typewriter would be slightly lower than in the word snow, the S would be slightly lower than the NOW. Right, and then somebody would fix that, and now it would be slightly higher. So now you've got snow written S with NOW being lower, right? And the other thing that happens, of course, about typewriters, of course, they get damaged. The edges, that once perfect Times Roman script now has been chipped away at the edge because the S has been pressed 197 million times.
This is now the same as ballistics, where because each gun, by the way, has its own DNA.
Yeah.
Everybody, and like you buy a gun, it's different than every other gun that's out there. And then if you shot that gun, somebody can tell that you shot that gun. So it's these things are very interesting.
And again, that's the same with typewriters. They've got their
typewriters, printers, things like that. These all have mechanical parts to them that move, that get torn.
And while we're talking about printers, there are microscopic traces in every printer that can actually tell which printer did that printing.
Yep.
And it's different for the one in our office here than my home computer, than your home computer. We can print the same document, and when we hold them up in front of each other, we're saying, yes, I swear that's an identical copy. But the expert can say, that was printed on Angela's printer, that was printed on Peter's printer, and that was printed on my
Canon at home.
Yeah,
or on the Invictus Peter's one. HP, or at our Vicos.
Yeah. So they can tell exactly what's printed where if they've got the expertise and knowledge to do so. Right. So there's an interesting information: alteration, all right? Alteration, erasure, obliteration, and overwriting. In the physical world, that has a different meaning than in the digital world. All right.
Well, what they've done is little tricks with photocopiers back in the day. They actually had contracts that were written to the person, actual contracts, and somehow they did these little tricks with photocopiers that some of the wording was changed. And they put it in there, tried to do a similar typeface as much as they could, and it made it look real. Hey, then I looked at that and I said, no, this is a slightly higher. This is it's just like a quarter of a millimeter higher than the next one, and the one down after that, the one after that. So it just doesn't look good. It looks faked.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So alterations is something that the relevant expert can find them.
Yeah.
Right? Less clear in the digital world, because in fact, other than the metadata that is behind, if I take the contract in the digital world and I change it, so I'm changing the salary from 14,000 to 140,000, right? You're probably going to spot it.
Yep. Right? It's because the spacing. There's spacing between words, and that both above it and below it, as well as beside each other, there's micro spacing.
Yeah.
And then sometimes there's signs of alteration as well.
Yeah. And erasure, obliteration, overwriting, they're all things that are trackable.
Yeah. Like I used to say, I said, well, stupid is not one of my names. Back in the day, I've had people try to do this with organizations that I've had to go in and investigate. And people were saying, well, this is stuff. This was actually signed by her. It says, yeah, it may have been signed by her at one time, but not signed by her under this new altered contract. Right? Yeah. Because the new altered contract doesn't mean anything. It's altered.
Yeah.
Okay? And they just couldn't understand how I figured it out. And I measure these things like tiny little things you can measure. It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think the next one here is also kind of interesting. The types of paper, the ink, the watermarks, copy machines, printing technology, printer cartridges, and stamp impressions, etc. They all leave their mark. So we talked at the beginning of the show about forensics and how we were talking last week about forensics and the bugs, the bugs and etc. This is your bugs. This is your bugs, right?
Yeah, this is
your microcosm of what's gone on, right? The types of ink, paper, right? So suddenly you printed you printed it on paper, but that paper was not available in Canada.
Yeah.
Right. So the paper was available only in Australia. Right. So the contract was printed on a type of paper that was only in Australia. And hey, you've got.
And the ink is a slightly different color than the ink that you claim it came from.
Yeah. And exactly. And all of these sort of things that actually have. And when it comes down to it, that might lead to somebody who's Australian, who's had who brought paper with them when they came from Australia. I've got British paper. I've got British paper at home, so there you go. But it's A4 paper, right? So all of those sort of things give differences, and they can tell based upon the types of paper what's involved in the paper manufacture exactly where the paper came from. Watermarks is part and parcel of that. The copy machines also, we talked about photocopiers having digital background.
Having their own personality, sort of thing.
Yeah, their own personality. Printing technology, and basically how you print the, even if it was exactly the same printer, let's be honest, I've used the same printer for the last 3 computers, right? The printer's probably 15 years old now. It works fine.
Hasn't run out of steam yet.
But it operates slightly differently on each of the computers. Right?
You have to get a different printer driver with each computer.
Exactly. And how that printer driver aligns things on the page will have differences, and there are experts that can find that know that kind of stuff. Right? Printer cartridges, where you got the printer cartridge from, so maybe you did print that with genuine HP or Canon ink, right?
And basically this is what they usually require when you have a printer, not to use another type of brand of printing to put it in your Canon printer, but to use Canon toners.
Well, again, yeah, but if you were using originally, in 2022 you were using Canon ink, but now in 2024 you're using another ink supplier, not Canon. Right? They can tell the difference. It all makes
you can tell the difference. I just get mine, because I got it from Staples, so it's easy enough just to get what I need from Staples.
Yeah. And these all have impressions. Other things, including physical things like stamps.
Yeah.
Right. The paid stamps and that sort of thing. And we've got a lot of them. The stamps that we use, the stamps that actually produce
the notary stamps.
Yeah, the notary or other stamps
or the commission.
Yeah. These kind of stamps that we do for our commissioning, right? They're individual, and this stamp over time, even if you were to go and do a Peter Giblett notary stamp yourself, it'll be different than this stamp.
Yeah, like somebody will come into your office, take the Peter Giblett commission stamp, forge your signature, and said, "Okay, Peter Giblett commissioned this," when in fact somebody else tried to forge your signature. Yeah. That's why these things, you just have to be careful with them, who gets a hold of it.
Yeah, and so I think that was kind of where we've been, is try to do a run through of how forensics helps in terms of civil court procedures,
And
right?
the other thing too to understand is that also things like if you're if you're an accident victim or you're an injured worker, a lot of times these forensics are sometimes used against you.
Yeah.
Okay?
Oh yeah.
If you're defense counsel, work for an insurance defense company, many times you try to use some of these things to try to prove that that person is malingering or whatever.
Well,
Right?
I must. There was I was speaking with an American private eye. He said the numbers of times he caught people. You know the braces you use when you've had so-called when you've had neck injury. He said, I was following this guy I was following this guy. He did everything right for 2 months. I was just on the phone calling my boss. He's injured. This guy's injured. And he walks out and cleans his car without his brace on.
Or the
And
people
then
who dance out of the courtroom after the jury
as
verdict
he's
is announced.
doing it, he says, no, he isn't. He's got his brace off and he's cleaning his car. I can't believe this. Because he'd been following him for a long time.
Mhm.
Right? And he'd never caught the guy out except on that one occasion when he was
So that's
giving
why
up.
you always have to be careful. Like when people come to me and there's some injury going on, a workplace injury or some other type of injury, we do warn them about the potential for surveillance.
Yeah.
Right, about what that is and how that could impact their case. We also know how to defend against that too. So there's a lot of that kind of thing back and forth, back and forth. But the thing is, these things are very useful. It's almost where we're getting a lot more sophisticated today with a lot of these things, where we can almost tell what people are doing. Okay? Like as I said, I don't need to know what people are doing. And then sometimes though, there's some types of fraud that are a little hard to detect because, as I said, they might be doing something and then may be giving you fake invoices or invoicing something that's not even done.
Yeah.
Hey, like it says, okay, I detailed Peter's car and washed it down and did all of these things, but you didn't even touch his car, but you billed me anyway.
Yeah.
So these sorts of things, eventually it gets found out.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Because sooner or later, like because something usually would trigger it. Because there's certain steps that have to be taken in certain processes, and something triggers it, and they say, where? Huh? Okay, let's see if there's anything else going on. Then you
Because
dig further and further.
let's say that the car cleaner said to me, yeah, I'll clean your car on the 4th of December, and I'm like, I get back to my car and on the 4th of December, and hey, I'm tired. I just want to get home. I'm done with work, right? I'm done with work. I'm just straight in the car, boom, drive home, not even notice it. Following morning, I look up and I go, how filthy that car is. I didn't drive it across the mud flats, right? Oh, they didn't do the cleaning yesterday.
Yep.
Right?
But they billed you, and you sure as
Yeah.
heck paid for it.
and Angela comes in waving the cleaning bill. Says, you got to pay the cleaning bill, Peter. I was like, what cleaning bill? They didn't do it. Right?
Yeah. So these are things that happen. It happens a lot with employers, happens with suppliers, with people who are contracting out and bringing suppliers to do things. The federal government had one where there's $250,000 fraudulently charged to the federal government. The person said they did all of this work. Time was put into details and everything into that invoice. It was almost as if this person was so attentive.
Hang on, though.
And then they found out nothing was done.
Hang on, though. But hey, there's even bigger scam in the Canadian government than that one.
Really?
It's the $65 million Arrive scam.
Arrive scam. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
A $50,000 piece of computer software that cost the government $65 million.
Yep. And how much did it get bid out for?
I could have done that. Hey, I and my friends in the IT sector, we could have done that for $1 million, and we'd have walked away with 100,000 each.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And
Yeah.
this is where, when you work in a place like the government or some large corporation that deals with a lot of suppliers, there needs to be supply management
Yes.
and contract management and procurement analysis. So when things are done, there has to be milestones.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Like you're doing something, okay, where is it?
Yep.
Okay?
Exactly.
And I think many companies, the problem is people are always in a hurry to get things done, and they don't do that. And any company could be fighting it worth it to do a lot more checks and balances. Okay, or
And
else
we
right
tend,
could have been avoided.
yeah, and we tend to end up. I think most companies, most people tend to end up. Oh, I'll do that tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, of course, tomorrow comes on and you haven't got time to check it. So what do? You sign it off.
Yep. Exactly.
Right?
And
Yeah.
this is where people can get into trouble, and they can be chased after, and even in some cases criminally charged.
Well, I'm not saying, I see, again, when I'm talking about the person signing it off, it's not that they've done
Signing it
wrong.
off in the government or whatever probably wasn't even aware of a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? They just didn't
Because
have
it
the
takes some awareness, because if it's done in a certain way where something is done fraudulently, invoices are done fraudulently, many times what happens is a person just looks at the details of what was done and it looks okay, signs it off, that's fine, and they approve it. But then the person's sitting there laughing their way to the bank. Okay?
Yeah.
And you don't usually find that out until you go back and you start looking into it and say, what? What the, WTF?
Yeah.
And you see that, and then you got to say, okay, where else is this happening? And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
you have to start digging. And that's when the forensic people come on board.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So that's been quite a bit of fun talking about this kind of stuff. And okay, if you need legal help, you can contact Invictus Legal on 905-688-5598. You can call her, Angela, or you can write to her, Angela, at weareinvictus.legal, or me, Peter, at peter@weareinvictus.legal. I encourage you always to spend time on our website, https weareinvictus.legal. There's lots you can find out about from there. And Robert's saying thank you and signing out. So thank you, Robert. Yep. And I think, well, then that leaves me then to introduce Angela's favorite part of the show, which is this.
So what you heard today on Spin Legal, whether this show or others in our series, this is not legal advice. We're not giving you legal advice when we talk to you about this. But if something related to this, or maybe something completely unrelated happened, or something that might have been talked about in one of our earlier shows, if you need advice or think you got a legal problem, talk to a paralegal or a lawyer, okay? Because then they can analyze your specific situation, and then they can give you specific legal advice that applies to your situation. Okay? Because that's best to do that, because we don't give legal advice by podcast.
Yeah. And in fact, neither can you, neither can anybody. And even when a lawyer's commenting from the courtroom steps about how they saved their client's bacon, that doesn't mean they say they can save yours.
Yep, exactly. Even a judge can't do it. They can't go onto a podcast and give advice like this.
Yeah.
Okay? Because legal advice is between a lawyer or a paralegal and their client.
Yeah. And that's basically it. So if you need to contact a paralegal or a lawyer, and if you need to specifically, contact us.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you, and have a great evening. And we'll see you again next week with some other Spin Legal topic.
Yes, we'll find something.
Yep. And we're signing out for now, and have a great week.